please stand for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing while Councilman Sarah leads us in prayer.
Almighty God, may we always keep in our hearts the good intentions that brought us all together. Guide our words and our thoughts so that we may create a foundation of understanding and cooperation, and let our efforts always lead to something positive for the people of our great community. Amen.
Thank you, Vince. If I could ask you to remain standing and I could ask for a moment of silence. Last week we lost a very dear friend to the city of Brigantine, and I know to the Elks organization with their exalted ruler, John Waldron, passing. As everyone knows, John was very involved in building that organization to the level it is today. And in particular, he was very involved in the scholarship fund, which gave thousands of dollars for young people to pursue their education beyond the high schools here in our area. And in John's memory, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence and to ask you all to keep his family in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you. Just to advise that meeting notices covering this meeting have been sent and posted as required under the Open Public Meetings Act. First order of business is the approval of the executive session minutes of 2/4/15. Can we have a motion and second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any additions or deletions to the minutes? Seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
View, abstain. McClay,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes.
DeLuca, Sarah,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor Gunther,
Yes.
motion carried.
Next, we have the approval of the requisition list, operating expenses, and payroll. Can I have a motion and second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
There was a bill on the list, leathers. Does that $44,000 include equipment, or is that part of the planning and designing charges?
I believe that is the equipment. Is that correct, John?
That's
That's the equipment.
partial payment for the equipment? Okay, thank you. I'd like to say something, if it's appropriate, Mayor, about last week's discussion on the bills list. I'd just like to say a few comments. Just general comments for the public. There was some mention of bills being paid late last week, and there was some comments made that alarmed some of my constituents and people watching the meeting that evening, referencing something about electric being turned off. So I'm waiting for information from City Hall. I reached out to Ed, and they're going to get me some documentation, because I don't know what that was based on, that comment, but I just want to make sure I get the correct information for the public, because people did ask me about that, about the electric bill. So I know that in the past, sometimes bills are paid 2-3 months, again, the blanket billing, but I'm waiting on that information, and I will bring that to the public and let them know how late the electric bills were paid, and if we were ever at threat of electric being shut off or not, because I don't know what that was based on, that information, so I'm searching for that facts to back up that. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this bill list or any previous bill list? Seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
View? Yes. McClay?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, next we do public comments on the agenda items only. So if anyone would like to speak on any agenda item, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and please use the microphone. Mr. Pucci.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Just two quick items tonight. The grant consultant, I support the grant consultant. but specifically, is he being hired again this year at the same rate?
Yes.
And number two is the contract reads that to exceed a certain amount, an approval will be done by the city. Can we be specific? Is the city manager, or is the city the council, because it involves monies? No,
Well, eventually, it would come to city council to approve any change in the contract would have to come here.
Okay, just had that question. My second item is on the ground level window replacement at the library. The information that I read on the website, if I'm correct, is the lowest bidder was Duran Engineering, but it's being awarded to a higher bidder, and I would just ask that question.
I'll let the manager respond to that, but that's not out of order.
That is correct. The lowest bidder was Duran Engineering. The second bidder was Remington and Vernick, a difference of $900. In this case, I'm recommending that council award the contract to the second bidder, Remington and Vernick, for that increased price. The reason being, Duran Engineering is also low bid on two of the other RFPs, and it is my thought that giving the third project to a different engineer would help us move these projects along quicker.
It have more to do with the volume of work being awarded to one engineering firm and getting these things turned around quickly.
I noticed that information also, and again, it was just asking a question, the specific reason for the differential. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other comments on agenda items? Okay, seeing none, at this time, we are going to have a presentation of the manager's budget. And we have our auditor with us this evening, Leon Costello. Remember, this is just the first phase in the budget process, and that is the manager presenting a budget to City Council for their review and subsequent approval after much scrutiny and the okay by the state at some point. So I'll turn it over to Ed for the manager's budget.
Thank you, Mayor. And to council, this was just printed today, so that's the reason you wouldn't have seen it earlier than this afternoon. We've been working on this, Leon and I, for several weeks. We're trying still to close out the balances from last year. So it is, as we stand here today, based on the information that we know today, this is the budget that we're presenting. We are proposing an appropriation of $29,820,000. That is a decrease from last year's appropriation of $1,714,000. The result is a 0-cent increase in our tax rate. We are within our spending cap and within our levy cap. And actually, I'd like to turn it over to Leon to go through some of the specifics.
Thanks, Ed. As Ed mentioned, this is the first crack at the budget. We have been spending a little bit of time on this. We are still waiting for some final information. Not good enough?
Just, yeah, there you go.
Still waiting for some final information before this becomes presented at your March 18th meeting for introduction. This is the manager's budget. There'll be a real budget that's produced on March 18th that will be introduced. Some of the highlights, if you look at sheet 10, this is part of your revenue section of the budget, and you'll see that the last 5 items that were in last year's budget as revenue will not be in this year's budget. They were one-time items that were in last year. Some of them had one-time expenses that go along with it. That accounts for some of the $1.7 million that were decreased by. If you look at sheet 18 of the budget. The deficit that you had in the golf course last year was $765,256. It's projected to be $342,700 this year, so that's a decrease of $420,000 from last year's budget. These will be finalized by the time we get to March 18th, but this is from the best information that we have right now. If you look at sheet 26, this is another one of the one-time items reserved for emergency vehicles and apparatus. That was $439,555. That was also on the revenue page on sheet 10, so it's out of one side, out of another side. This was money received for insurance proceeds that you're going to be using to purchase equipment for. It's being reserved, moved over into the capital fund for future expense that you have committed to, I believe, already. On sheet 27, our debt service is basically the same as it was last year. And importantly, you still have the second line down, payment of bond anticipation notes, $816,000. There are the payments on the 2 tax appeal refundings that you did. There's 2 separate notes that you had, 2 separate years that you did the ordinances for that. So the $816 will be still in the 15 budget. Sheet 28, another decrease. The special emergencies have decreased from 696 down to 415. That's because the payment schedule on those, some of them have fallen off, and this is all you're left with for right now, so it's another decrease in the budget. The sheet 34A, $35A and $36A are the golf course items. And that's on $34A, you'll see the $342,700 at the bottom.
Did you say 34, sheet 34A?
Yeah,
I don't have a 34A.
No?
Nope, just 30.
It's got 34, went from 30 to 34.
Oh, they stopped copying them, I guess.
I think it's in it, or I think it goes
You have
35,
it?
36, then 34A. It's there. if you-
Oh,
up
go
there.
past 36.
36?
got it.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
there it is.
Okay.
And there's 35 in there.
So there's 34, 35, and 36 are water and sewer, and then 34A, 35A, and 36A are the golf course utility. You have 2 different utilities. So at the bottom, in the 15 columns, the $342,700, that is the anticipated shortfall, which is down from the 765. A lot of that is attributable to, if you go to 36A, 2 more pages, there's not the $187,000 operating deficit that you had the year before, and at the top of the page, an emergency for $14,050.
Where's that again?
36A?
On
36A?
36A, towards the bottom, the
I got
second
it.
line from the bottom says deficit in operations is nothing in 15. Last year, you had $187,925. And then at the top, this emergency authorization, there was a $14,000 emergency. This year, there's nothing. So there's quite a few combinations that are helping to improve the situation. The health insurance is up. That's one that's an increase. Salaries and wages overall are down. The amounts that are in each individual salary and wage line collectively will work. They're working on allocations from what goes from the current fund and what goes to the water and sewer fund. But in general, when you get to March 18th, when you introduce this, there'll be actual backed up by detailed sheets that show each one. So there may be some adjustments in this. If you look at sheet 12, specifically, you see under general administration, there's a big increase in there. in the salary and wage. Because essentially, you're paying for 2 managers for half a year. And that'll go back down again in 2016. You know, as you go through this and you wonder why that one's up so much, that's why that one's up.
Well, wouldn't it go down because we don't have a city engineer yet?
Well, that'll be in another line.
The line budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this line, which contains 2 people now, where it used to be 1,
Right.
but there'll be another line where it goes down, so.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be tons of questions that you have on these, but again, this is the best information that we have as of tonight, and by March 18th, it'll be 100% all filled in, all the right-hand side will be filled in with all the actuals, and that will be backed up by, you know, any kind of analysis that you want on each of the line items.
I have a question.
Sure.
First page.
Okay.
Con-
The cover page, you mean?
Yes.
Mhm.
The condition of surplus. Availability, you have nothing in there. Is that a misprint? Do we have surplus?
You have some, but your records don't show what it is yet. Your records are not up to date. Your general ledger is pretty incomplete.
Well, when we present the March 18th budget, we'll have these balances, we'll have that number.
Yeah, but I mean, it's usually $1.5 million to $2 million.
Like I said, I made copies to show you because I knew this question was going to come up. If you want, I'll pass it out.
It's pretty glaring right in your face here, and then, you know, we don't know what our surplus is.
Anybody else have 2?
No.
All right. I'm going to stand here. You get them in front. If you look at this,
I'll look at it.
this is a picture of the general ledger today. You can see it was run February 18th at 2:38. And the first item I have circled is taxes receivable is a $29 million deficit. Can't be. You know, this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Liens receivable, a $342,000 deficit. And if you go to page 6, which is the last page of this, this is your fund balance page, and there was, at the start of the year, and it shows up on your sheet, $3,267,955.65. That's
Right.
this item right here. Your budget used $1.4 million, and right now it just shows a balance of $1,848,000. Nothing was posted to it all year long as far as the replenishments of fund balance. So in a nutshell, the records, your general ledger is far from being anything that's useful. And until Peg gets that done, I can't tell you what your fund balance is. So I left it blank for tonight.
So you're saying that none of the balances in the various accounts have gone into to surplus, have been posted as surplus now?
Do you know what the number was last year, our fund balance?
Yeah, it was the starting number, the 3 million.
Which one?
2 million, right in front of that.
The
column.
3,267,000?
Yeah.
Okay,
That was the opening fund.
okay.
And have you been able to roll over the year completely at this point?
No, not at all. You can see that it's far from being completed.
So that's why you don't have anything posted
Correct.
into the
Okay.
Yeah,
surplus account?
I'm not putting anything down that I don't know what it is.
Okay, but that's just reliant on the issue of transferring the general ledger, bringing it up to date.
I'm sorry, say it again?
It's all reliant on bringing the general ledger up to date.
Oh, yeah, yeah. She's working on it right now. I mean, it's process.
So,
Is she using the new system for the general ledger?
Yeah,
Or is she
this
using
the-
the
this
old
is the new
system?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so that's probably why we have transition in the manager's office. We're
Oh, no, it's
using a
nothing
new,
to
s-
do with
we have a
corrections.
new
No, no.
system.
Not
We have
at
a new
all.
system.
She's been
I-
using this for 18 months.
Well, I know that the budget was going through a process of trying to get it done without the transfer over to Edmonds.
No, you've had Edmonds for 20 years.
Well, I had a meeting with the city manager, and they were in the process of transferring everything over just about 2 weeks ago.
The meeting that we had, we were closing out the 2014 year. We've been
But not in
using-
Edmonds.
No,
No, in Edmonds,
we've
yeah.
been using Edmonds,
Yeah.
absolutely. If I led you to believe something different, now, we're in Edmonds, we're trying to close out the 2014 year. That's, in fact, the information that you had requested regarding the electric company bills, and I said I can't get that to you right now, is because the personnel are busy trying to close out the 2014 year so that we can get this information done.
Mhm.
Once we're caught up and once we finish that, then I'll be able to get you that information. We got to focus on this right now. And I meant to, when I opened up, to tell council and to tell the public that this budget will be posted to the website tomorrow, so that the public has the opportunity to see it, and to ask council or suggest that you go through it, and when you have questions, contact me, and we can meet at your convenience. We'll go through. I'll do my best to answer the questions. What I can't answer, I will get answered for you, so that when we get to the March 18th budget, which will be similar to this, I don't expect huge changes. It's just the numbers, the numbers may change a little bit, but in general, it's going to be very close to this. But we'll get a lot of the preliminary questions hopefully answered for you ahead of time. So when we get to the March 18th, we're kind of already understanding generally where.
And by
this
that
is going.
time, the general ledger should all be in Edmonds as well.
We,
I hope, yeah.
Now, going forward, everything is going to be in that one unified system, so we're not going to have a problem like this?
but we don't have a problem because of
The
the
system's
system.
still the same.
No,
You know, we have a problem because if you don't put data into a system, you don't get data back out of a system.
Go to
Doesn't
your
matter
last
if you put it in Excel or you put it in a ledger that someone writes by hand. You still have to have the information provided. I want to refer, if you would, if you look in it was in your mailbox, as a letter that we received from DCA and also from our former auditor. I would suggest that you read that, and I think it speaks to the condition of where we are right now with our finances. So, once again, what we're dealing with here, and Lisa, this may be tied up to your former question about the bills. All of this is really one issue, and that is that we have to do a better job of accounting for the funds that are brought in and out of the city. And once again, it's a multi-million-dollar enterprise, and you have to be able to account for each and every amount that is come in and is posted in the right areas so that we can move forward and make our decisions based on financial information that's accurate. Right now, I think what you're telling us is this is your best estimate as to where we are, and hopefully over the next several weeks you'll be able to finalize some of those numbers.
Just look at your last page of the handout, just for an example, where I have the two items circled. You budgeted $816,250 for the bond anticipation note. It shows nothing being paid and all of it's still a balance. We know that's not true. You paid this thing, so where is it? It was paid in December. It's got to be posted someplace. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I'm looking at every day. So I don't care if you post it, like Phil said, manually, with crayons, it's not posted. This is the system that's been used. This is the budget account status. Where did that get charged?
Did you have, just curious, because, I mean, I understand it's not complete, and I know information needs to be input. You need the manpower to put the information in, and it takes time. I don't want to compare to last year, but I don't remember this happening last year. Is there an explanation of why we didn't have the same problem last year?
I think if, and I'd refer to the solicitor, but I really can't comment on that unless everyone in that office was present, because I can't talk about. True?
Let me advise you to be cautious as to where this conversation is
Yeah.
going. Collectively, mayor and council, collectively. The auditor is pointing out some deficiencies in information. As you probe those deficiencies, I would ask you to kindly not begin engaging in conversations about any employees.
Right.
Please leave that alone.
So,
I wasn't trying to do that. I was just wondering why we didn't see this, and I didn't mean to go in that direction if it
yeah.
sounded that
So you'd
way.
have to ask people in the finance office why this wasn't posted. And I don't want to say any more than that.
What I will say, and I would like to leave it at this, once again, you know, over the next month, we will have the final balances, we will have the final numbers, and at March 18th, we will present a budget that is based on final numbers. It will be very similar to this, once again, but it will be final, it will be numbers. So we'll get to that point. And moving forward, we will put plans in place that get us to that point sooner than so that we're not in the end of February trying to get to that point. We'll be sooner than that. We'll be at the balances. But once again, I'll ask council to please review the budget and please contact me. I'm happy to meet with you anytime. I think hopefully you know that. We'll go through the budget. I'll do my best to answer your questions, and I will certainly, what I can answer, I will get answered for you and get that information back to you so that at the March 18th meeting, hopefully most of all of, if not all of your questions are answered.
One final point on what the city is required to do. You have a thing called annual financial statement that is basically all your general ledgers and your income statements and a lot of data. It's the same size as the budget, only it's a quart size, and it's called the annual financial statement. That's due by statute to be filed on February 10th. And obviously today's February 18th. And this is the first time, I've been doing this for 40 years, and it's the first one that I will file late. So, and there is a fine attached to it that usually is never enforced, but there is the provision for that.
So we should expect another letter from the state?
You probably will.
Okay. I'm absolutely disturbed by everything. I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars here that's not accounted for, as of yet. As of yet. And I know we'll find it. It's not missing or anything, it's just
Nothing like
didn't
that.
put it in the ledger and stuff
We
like
just
that.
don't have our balances done.
I understand
We
that.
will get there. We just don't have the balances done.
There's no mention of any of being missing. None.
No, absolutely not. I'm not accusing anybody of
Yeah,
taking any
none.
money or anything like that. It just, if it was my business, we'd be talking about some things. So, thank you.
Bill, can I just let people know the website is bb-nj.com? For this to be on there, because some people I don't think know our website. Again, it's bb-nj.com.
And please let them know it's not a complete budget so they don't freak out.
Any other questions for the auditor?
That's bad.
Leon, I know you've put in a lot of time already and appreciate you, your work in trying to put things back in order. And hopefully you'll be able to move forward at the first meeting in March with all of those accounts being reconciled at that point.
I'm sure we'll get them done. Yeah.
I would have more questions, but not at this time because I just received this at 5:30. But once I go through it, I'll have more questions for you.
Yeah, let's do it before.
We just printed it about 3:30.
Oh.
And Ed, I want to thank you for all the hours you've put in with Leon trying to square this away as well. I know you've been in for several days when you should have been off, trying to work this out, but it will get there, I'm confident.
I'm pretty close with me. But thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Leon. Any further discussion by council members on the budget, or are we okay to move forward? Okay, next is Resolution 2015-35, award professional service contract for grant consultant. And this will be awarded to Jim Rotella. Have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. As you know, Jim has been very successful in getting us a number of grants, including the streetscaping grant that we'll be approving this evening as well, or the planning for that. So I think everyone is in agreement that he has done an exceptional job with us for a number of years, and in particular after Sandy, moving forward. Okay, can we have roll call, please?
View? Yes. McLean?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Resolution 2015-36, authorization to reject and rebid the 2014 Brigantine Road Program. Can I have a motion and second, please?
So moved.
Okay, bids were received, and they came in higher than the engineer's estimates, so we're rejecting. And there is one typo. We did not have a $31 million bid
Oh, okay.
on the road program.
That was mine.
That was your bid. Ed, anything else you want to add to this?
I'll be meeting with the engineer and working on what revisions to the plans we need to make to get it back under budget. So, and we'll go back out to bid.
Ed?
What was the typo on that 31 million? Just 1 million? Is the typo the 3?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Ed, the Brigantine Road Program, what does that actually include?
Bear with me for a second. That includes the reconstruction of 8th Street South from Brigantine Avenue to Beach Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
The reconstruction of Bayshore Avenue, the northbound lane from 26th Street to 15th Street. The reconstruction of the intersection of Heald Circle and Washington Drive. Reconstruction of a portion of North Shore Drive adjacent to Golf Course Drive. And then several Sandy-related repairs, which is the Harbor Beach Cove, which is the end of Lagoon Boulevard, which is the boat ramp parking area and the golf course parking area that were used for staging, and several miscellaneous. So what occurred here, the miscellaneous repairs, which is the list of drainage complaints that John and I received, and we kind of pile up together or compile together. Several of those grew to where we were almost repaving the entire street. So those scopes grew considerably. So we have to look at each of these projects and get this project back down to budget.
This doesn't have anything to do with the floodgate, the proposed floodgate at the boat ramp?
It does not.
No, this is mostly the
The mechanic.
projects that were spelled
Right.
out in the bond
That is
in
correct.
August?
That is correct.
Okay.
In doing the engineer's estimate, was that done before the expansion of that miscellaneous category?
So the initial engineer's estimate that we used for the bond that I prepared, the answer is no. But I prepared just an approximate amount for miscellaneous. The engineer's estimate that CME provided, once we finished the design, that was based on the final project as it was bid.
Okay, so everybody did come in above the revised engineer's estimate.
That is correct.
So what are our options? Is there an alternate or a supplemental funding source to cover what might be the real, if you will, cost of this, or we're going to have to trim the scope?
So a little bit of both, but what I'm going to look at with the engineer is each one of these project specifics, the specific projects that were identified in the bond ordinance, we're going to break them down and make sure that their cost is what we estimated. So I'll have a better idea of that after I sit down with the engineer. So that's going to be one point. We can also look at pulling out some of the miscellaneous items and putting them towards the next bond, which we would look to do another capital improvement bond this year. So the supplemental funding idea.
Hey, what's the difference between the estimate and where we came in?
About 200+ thousand.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
You?
Yes.
McClay?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Actually, I apologize. I did have one other question. Ed, when you decide after revisiting this, which portions of it may need to be trimmed back or pushed to a next project, will you be bringing that information to us?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. And yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, Resolution 2015-37, authorizing to receive bids for professional services associated with the NJEDA Streetscape Grant. Could I have a motion second, please?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Any discussion? Ed, do you want to talk about where we are with that process with the grant?
Yeah, so we received notice that we'll receive a grant in the amount of about $750,000 for a streetscape project in the Central Business District, so 9th Street South to 14th Street. This resolution authorizes us to put out an RFP to our design consultants for the design, the planning, the design, and the construction management of that project, which we'll put out very shortly. We'll get started. The program, the grant, is somewhat accelerated in that they want to see this project get started almost as quickly as we want to see the project get started. So we need to kind of move on this. That's why we're doing an RFP that does both the design and the construction management. Idea, get us through the design, out to bid, award contract, and hit the ground. Probably look at the construction being right after summer.
In September, we're looking at construction.
That's correct.
Ed, what are the parameters that we have in place, that we'll have in place when the RFP goes out as far as the scope of the design work? And I'm asking because and I don't know, maybe the design is pretty fully realized already, but otherwise it would seem that you could have room for a lot of ambiguity, and the bidders, they'll have their own subjective conception of what it is they want to design, and others will have a completely different view, and then how do we measure the value of one proposal versus another?
So there is a provision in the RFP for, I believe it's 3 to 5 meetings with a committee that I'll ask council to set up to guide the designer in terms of what we're looking to do out there. However, in terms of the management, he's looking at a grant of $750,000. So the scope is somewhat defined by the dollar amount that we're going to get. So the construction cost is estimated at $750,000. So that kind of ties him down. In terms of the ambiguity is he has to anticipate 3 to 5 meetings with a committee to get us to the final design.
Okay, so I'm clear. Would that be 3 to 5 meetings before the receipt of proposals from everybody, or once an initial concept or proposal has been conditionally accepted, then there'll be meetings to finalize the design based on that?
I'm not sure I understand.
No, when we go out for the RFP, and we're going to ask these people to give us their proposals for both design and for management, and understanding the management part of it is controlled by the amount of money available. But given that you could have some great differences in the design proposals that you get from different bidders, would these 3 to 5 meetings with yourself and others in the city be before the receipt of proposals so that the bidders have a better idea what it is that we're looking to get from them specifically in terms of the design? Or would we be receiving the proposals, selecting from among those, and then having a series of meetings with that person to come up with the design?
The second option. So they're going to provide a proposal that anticipates 3 to 5 meetings with a committee to establish a design, to finalize a design. So their proposal will anticipate those meetings. So we're going to look at, I'm going to ask council, hopefully a meeting in March. Here are 5, 7 our responses to our proposal to do this work. And I'm going to ask you to award to one of them. And then we select a committee, and then the committee meets with that one professional who's awarded the contract to move forward on the design. So the design services, in terms of the ambiguity of the design, that they're going to be able to give us a price, understanding, 3 to 5 meetings. There's conceptual designs that occur in that process. So they're going to be able to prepare a proposal with that understanding, and they'll all be able to provide a very competitive and, I think, clearly understood scope, so that they can give a fair number. So I'm not concerned about that.
And the general concept is something that has been talked about for a number of years. How the different treatments that they come up with could vary between designers, but I think that the general concept is something that was most likely submitted with the grant application that showed it kind of in broader terms what we were looking to do within that area, whether it's pavers and stamped concrete. That may be something that comes up as a design option, or whether, I think clearly what we're looking at is lighting, streetscaping, some form of that, as well as pedestrian nodes and ways to cross the avenue safer. Those types of things, I think, are defined in the grant application and part of that over the years.
Well, I agree with you to an extent. I mean, the broad strokes of it, excuse me, are out there, but you can still have a great number of differences. Over a 5-block area, one proposal might want to have more pedestrian seating spaces or landscaped areas, and the next one may want to go with a different type of, or different scope of pavers, or, as you say, stamped concrete. I mean, each element of the design, you could differ one to another, and if I'm hearing you right, Ed, when you receive these proposals, there would then be a step where you'd coordinate with council to get the feedback as to which of the concepts we want you to pursue.
I think we're talking about two different things.
Yeah.
Let's be clear on this. I don't know if you're anticipating putting out a general RFP and having designers come in and present their plan for that area, or you're anticipating putting out an RFP to select one designer, and for that designer to come in, work with the committee and come up maybe with different iterations. I think I'm not sure what you asked, Rick. Because I have seen it done both ways, where you put out we're looking to build X, Y, and Z, and architects or designers will come in with their concept. And then you may choose from those architects. But I think what you're talking about is selecting one and then have that person come up with, or that firm come up with, a number of different concepts.
That is correct. Working in concert with the committee that we established.
Well, then, now I'm more puzzled than before. So we really won't have any information other than basic information about the identity and the background and other projects, I guess, that the proposers have done. But we won't know at the point where we're deciding that you're the guy we're going to sit down with and hammer out a design. We really won't know what their idea is of a design. So who's doing the design?
So the committee is steering the professional towards the design. Do we want to go with pavers? Do we want to do street trees? Do we want to have 5 benches on this block? Do we want to have 3 benches? And the designer, part of the criteria is they have to have done this type of work. So they're going to have some experiences to share, but it's going to be the committee that's leading the design.
But wouldn't it be more, I don't know, logical, to me anyway, if the committee had some basic ideas and that went into the RFP?
So I think it does, because that was the grant that was applied for was a streetscaping grant.
Right, but I
That-
mean,
that does
that's kind of a
pedestrian
broad
nodes.
brush.
But it pedestrian nodes, it does pavers, it does the concrete, it does benches, does landscaping, so it's all, in that context, it's kind of out there. That's what we're looking to do. It's,
We're not putting faces on top.
yeah, we're not doing the facade, we're doing the 20 foot of concrete with something, this concrete sidewalk. We're gonna do the pedestrian nodes at the corners, so the crossing of Brigantine Boulevard is shorter. We're gonna do something decorative. We'll do the street lights, we'll do street trees, we'll do some benches. It isn't,
Well, you're at $1.5 million right there, so.
but that's where we thought the concept of having a committee together that would lead the professional in whether we want pavers, whether we want, we can have some creativity there, but I think the scope, the way I'm looking at it, I don't think the professionals will have a difficult time preparing their proposals, and I think the key for, at least in my mind, is that all the professionals that are bidding it are bidding on the same, general idea, and they can be competitive. They all see the same thing, and they're gonna give us those numbers. So it's gonna be a competitive bid. We'll have a committee together that works with that consultant. You guys will obviously award the contract to the consultant. So you're gonna see what their background is, see what the prices are, and actually select the committee that's gonna meet with them. And so I think that gives us, the direction, and gives them the direction on how to bid this, and gives us the direction towards putting a design together that we're all happy with.
Just seems that level of detail, I'll call it a preliminary level of detail that you're talking about coming out of the committee would make more sense to have in our RFP. Because otherwise, when we get proposals, on what are the proposers going to base their price, other than a very general thing, and more to the point, how do we differentiate between them? Let's assume they're all generally qualified, but, the vision that the committee may have, in terms of some specific things, how much landscaping, how much, how many trees, things like that.
That's where they're gonna understand that they have 3 to 5 conceptual plans based on the direction and the meetings with the committee that are gonna get them to the final design. So they're building that cost into their proposal, because they all know they're gonna sit down with this committee, and they're gonna have the first meeting is gonna be, this is what I like, what I don't like, these are the ideas. The professional is gonna say, well, this is what we've done, here's some pictures, this is what we like. And then they're gonna come up with, let's start with this, and here's design number 1, very broad, general, okay, change it, do this, add this. There's number 2, and so they're all gonna know, and they're gonna be able to provide they're gonna have a high understanding of what their costs are gonna be based on those 3 to 5 conceptual plans, and the changes that can happen. It's not rocket science. It's not gonna be, we're not gonna propose anything that nobody has done before, that nobody can anticipate doing, and it's strictly drafting the changes that come and develop out of these meetings.
I
Well,
understand.
you actually drafted a plan.
There were several
plans that
were
already
put in.
exist, so it's a matter of someone looking at them and saying aesthetically, is this what we want? Structurally, or things much different than what's in that plan? I doubt it, but a lot of the preliminary work is already done.
But the RFP is based on the things that you've already drawn up, so they know what the whole,
The idea, sure.
So
We're replacing
what the
curb, we're
scope of the
replacing
project is.
sidewalk, We're installing some pavers or stamped concrete. All those things, they don't change the cost of the designer's work. change the cost of the construction, but in terms of the designer's work, they're really not gonna change that. And this scope, the way it is anticipated, was already approved by the NJEDA in terms of how we're proposing to put out this RFP. So the people that are issuing the grant are on board with the way we're talking, at least in my mind, the way that this was going out to bid. So that we would select a consultant, then we would be working with that consultant with the committee to come up with a final design. It's here tonight partly because they have this accelerated plan for they want us to be done construction by the end of this calendar year. So for me to put out an RFP to give vendors a couple weeks or our professionals a couple weeks to put their proposals together, then bring it back to council for an award, and then to get moving with the design and the committee, you know, we're on a tight schedule. Obviously we'll get it done, but you know, I think this is a good proposal, RFP, to put out for the consulting services.
Okay, any further discussion?
When is the committee going to be set?
I'm sorry?
First things first, so probably next meeting, I'll bring that to you to discuss.
That'll be a mix of business owners and citizens and, okay.
Right.
One simple question. Are the engineering fees, are they come out of the 750,000, or is that separate? Was that a grant?
The 750 is a grant.
No, I mean, the planning and designing. Did we have a planning and designing grant for this project?
We did not.
Okay.
No, we awarded a separate contract for that.
Okay.
So what I was speaking with Leon earlier, we will be presenting to you a bond ordinance that will fund this project with the understanding that 750,000 of that will come from the grant. So I believe this is a reimbursement grant. So we'll do a bond ordinance to fund the entire project, which will include the engineering work and the construction cost. When we're done, we'll be reimbursed the cost of construction.
And according to the EDA, this has to be completed and all funds dispersed by December 15th?
By the end of this year.
By the end of December.
Yes.
Which is an accelerated schedule since we were only notified a month ago, yeah. So we have to.
That's like the speed of light.
Yes.
I mean, really.
Fortunately, you know, as was said earlier, the concept has already been done, and at least working with the scope of the project, and another part of that will be defining, I think we ought to look at the $750,000 and the engineering cost as the scope of the project, that we're not coming up with a design that's going to increase the number well beyond that. So I think, you know, we're looking hopefully to do this primarily out of grant funds.
And you'll control the calendar of meetings, so everything's compressed enough. Okay.
Okay. We have roll call, please.
View? Yes. McClay?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yeah, I'd like to request that when the RFP is prepared, before it goes out, if you could email me a copy of it, just so I could have a look at it. And also, following up on Councilman Picardi's suggestion, you have a lot of stakeholders in that stretch that I'm sure would be interested in the design and what we're asking for. So if we could find a way to work them into the process early on, I think that makes sense. With that, yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Next, we move to Resolution 2015-38, a refund of a building permit fee. We have motion and second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
View? Yes. McClay?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next, we move to Resolution 2015-39, a real estate tax refund. We have a motion and second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
View. Yes. Declay.
Yes.
McCarty.
Yes.
DeLucre.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Mayor Gunther.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Resolution 2015-40, appointing contact person for the Employees Practices Liability Helpline for the Atlantic County JIF. Have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Diane is the principal, Diana Friday is the principal contact on this, right? Now, does Ellie back her up on any other things? Ellie Derrickson?
She does, yes. In fact, Ellie is the backup on the JIF with, behind Karen Blowers. So Ellie is involved in that as well. Yes.
Okay, can we have roll call, please?
View. Yes. McClay.
Yes.
McCarty.
Yes.
DeLucre.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Mayor Gunther.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Resolution 2015-41 is award of contract for the ground level window replacement at the Brigantine Library. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And this is awarded to Remington and Vernick and Wahlberg. Any discussion? Could we have roll call, please?
View. Yes. McClay.
Yes.
McCarty.
Yes.
DeLucre.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Mayor Gunther.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Resolution 2015-42 is award of contract for the repair of the library steps, and this would be awarded to the lowest responsive bidder, Doran Engineering. Can we have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, my only question is, Doran, it came in so low compared to everybody else.
Agreed. I think they were trying to make a statement, but they came in very low on all three projects.
Okay, can we have roll call, please?
Wait, I'm sorry, I had one comment. Following up on what Ed just said, and I don't know if it's a statement or not a statement, but I would hope that you would understand that the point of bidding the engineering work the way we've tried to do these past couple of years is to get as close to a fixed price as we can and to avoid change orders. Now, the nature of these particular contracts really, I don't think, will lend itself to change orders anyway, but as a general rule, I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm going to be looking at.
Okay, could we have roll call, please?
View. Yes. McClay.
Yes.
McCarty.
Yes.
DeLucre.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Mayor Gunther.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Resolution 2015-43, award of contract to consulting engineer for surveying, planning, and conceptual design for the Department of Public Works / recycling yard. And this is awarded to Doran Engineering based on their low bid of $7,700. Motion is second, please.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
I don't mean to throw a shoe in the works, but when someone bids so low as this, what criteria would you use to say a bid was too low or where it didn't fall in the realm of it being responsible?
Actually, for most projects that I bid, whether it's the professional services such as this or even construction contracts, if there is a low bid, extremely low, and I'll give you an example, one of our NJEIT projects, which was the dredging of the golf course lakes, which I know that was a professional services RFP. And I know that project has some pretty extensive environmental issues with it. The low bidder on that was less than half the price of the second bidder on that one. So I called that bidder up, that responder, and spoke with them about the scope of work And it ended up that professional asked to withdraw his or her bid. So that was on that project. And that has happened at times. It's much different when we do a public bid because there's a bid bond, and really that's a different consideration. But in these bids, so I did the same thing on this round, and I called the low bidder and the second bidder, and I talked with them, made sure they understood the scope of work, make sure that they were comfortable with their number, that there was not a mistake in their bid, that the secretary didn't misunderstand, the number, whatever the case was, to make sure that they are confident in their number. I understand that we're not looking for change orders, but we are looking for competitive bids that are fair on the same playing field, so that everybody had the same understanding when they presented that bid, and that's how I do it. I make sure that I have that conversation, a very frank conversation with both the low and the second bidder, and make sure that they're comfortable with the bid, and I did have that conversation in the case.
Thank you.
Ed, this project in the conceptual design for the Public Works recycling yard, was this a planned project that we had? Was this bonded for already?
So this is a project that is not bonded, however, the money is encumbered, and it is something with the Public Works Department. So as I'm sure you all know, we are in need of a salt storage facility at Public Works, and John has been trying to keep the DEP at bay in terms of that situation. We can't come to council for a bond that will fund this facility until we know really where we're going to put it and how we're going to site it down there. So we came up with the idea, let's do this conceptual study for the entire Public Works yard, including the recycling center. So there's been changes that John has been making with the recycling yard, and more changes that he would like to get to that really make it a more user-friendly and more functional site. We want to kind of at least know what the overall plan of that Public Works yard is, even if we're not going to fund it all at once, even if we're going to do it over 5 years, but we need to know what that overall plan is going to be so that then we can address the immediate need, which is this salt storage facility. So to answer your question, it was not bonded, but it is funded. The money is encumbered, and there is sufficient funds for this.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on Resolution 2014-43? As a follow-up to this, too, I know we have some work on public buildings and grounds that we're in the process, roof on City Hall and some other projects. I think when you and I discussed this briefly, but we need to look at the library for some other repairs too, exterior doors and things of that nature, and possibly some work on the some of the exterior of City Hall that is in need of probably some additional carpentry work on some areas. So hopefully either we can wrap that up into what we already have out there, or something to consider as we put together this year's debt.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
View. Yes. McLean.
Yes.
McCarty.
Yes.
Lucre.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Mayor Gunther.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, authorization to sell surplus property at public auction. We have a list of items, none of them work, so putting them up for auction. Motion and second, please.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
View. Yes. McLean.
Yes.
Cardy?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, resolution 2015-45, the authorization to receive bids for golf course fertilizer, chemicals, and seed. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
View? Yes. McLean?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, we move to our consent agenda. We have the Northfield Community School beach cleanup request, the Green Team Rain Barrel Workshop request, and the Fish for Life Fishing Tournament request. Could we have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Could we have roll call?
View? Yes. McLean?
Yes.
McCarty?
Yes.
DeLucre?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor Gunther?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, now we move to the Manager Council Committee discussion. Ed, I'll let you start with the office hours for the construction department.
Thank you, Mayor. Rich Stevens, our construction official, has come up with a plan that he believes will help improve the processing of permits at the construction office. So the plan is on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at 1 o'clock. That office will be closed, and they will strictly process permits. The idea, again, is to expedite the turnaround on permits. The 1 o'clock time was picked because already in place, they have a 1 o'clock deadline to schedule inspections for the next day. So this will not interfere with the scheduling of inspections for the next coming day, but it will allow us to move through our permits quicker, get things processed, and get them turned around quicker. We have been hovering around a 3 to 4 week turnaround. We're looking to improve on that. It's a temporary measure, and we're going to see how it works.
What's your scope to analyze it? You gonna let it go for 6 months, 3 months, or how?
Be more in terms of 3 months. We'll see how it's working. But I'll be with Rich. We have department head meetings monthly, so we'll be on top of it. And Rich he's sharp. If it's not working, we'll make whatever adjustments need to make. But I'm pretty confident in his strategy, and he's comfortable that this will improve.
Are there times in the year when more permits come in than others?
So
Or
the
is it pretty
last,
steady?
since Sandy, all bets are off in terms of that. So, but typically, in a normal year, there are times that building, the permits increase. But right now, it's just, we're beyond that for now. So again, it's just, our number of permits that we're processing is still elevated from Sandy. This is just an effort, like I said, a temporary process. We'll put it in place, we'll make sure it works. If it doesn't work, we'll tweak it, and we'll improve that turnaround.
Great. Okay, next, the community garden. Lisa, I think you asked for this one?
Yeah, I did. The Green Team did a review of the types of projects they'd like to work on for 2015, and one that kept coming up over and over again is a community garden. We do not have a community garden. Our definition of a community garden would be to start small, 8 to 10 raised beds on a city site, city property, and a committee has been formed to explore and plan this whole, how this plan would be implemented. Grant money has been applied for. One is in the process through Atlantic Care for their Growing Garden Grant, or Growing Green Grant. So we're hoping to get $500 there. And then with the Sustainable Jersey Grant, there's also part of that $2,000 that would go towards this. So it wouldn't cost the taxpayers any money. We would need a location. The whole objective of this garden this year would be a giving garden. We would want to give the harvest of the garden to our local food bank here in Brigantine and any seniors or families that are currently on the list at the food bank. We would like to share, so no one's going to keep the harvest. The garden, once the committee meets and we plan this all out, some of the ideas we have is going to be educational and encourage better nutrition, physical activity. And originally, I think I talked to John Doring about this, and we were thinking somewhere in the center of town, but now we looked at the area behind the community center where the water is drained, there's a drainage problem, and we were wondering if we can have a piece of that land to create a community garden.
And we spoke about that when you came, when we met the other, like 2 weeks ago, and I've spoken with Jim Mogan and John Doran also, and I think that's a great idea and a great location for it. So originally we were talking about across the street, and I think there's some pluses and minuses to that, but certainly the area next to the cul-de-sac, I think serves very well for several reasons that we talked about at our meeting, so I think that's a great idea.
I agree,
The idea to correct the drainage thing, though, is that going to get in the way, one
So
or the other?
We would make sure that it's sited so that it does not interfere with a proposed drainage project
Right.
that would address the drainage problem there.
One of the nice things about that location as well would be the ability to incorporate gardening into what goes on at CER right now, whether it's senior citizens having access to that or actually teaching gardening classes. So I think it's a great site.
Yeah, so we're just in the preliminary phases. We're formulating a committee now, and once we have our committee together,
It's not the practice field.
we'll have a plan.
I don't know.
Start that again.
And we would love to sit down and come up with a design and how much space we're allowed to use. So we're figuring 8 to 10 4x8, 8-inch raised beds. So I don't know how much space that would be, maybe 3 feet between each bed. So mathematically, I don't know how much space that is. So we would have
Get a
to
mower in there.
come up with a conceptual plan and design for it.
Can you check with the Rams too to make sure it's,
Not the
as
practice
Councilman
field.
Simpson said, not on the practice field?
And
you
I
know, with
did,
the
like I
footballs
said,
and the spinach.
I did speak with Jim Mogan, and there's a recreation committee meeting this coming week on Monday, which he's gonna bring this up as well to the recreation committee. So, again, with ideas of, at the time when I spoke with Jim, we were talking about possibly here, possibly down there, or maybe they had some other ideas. So, I'll get back in touch with him so that he knows we're kind of focusing in on that area next to the cul-de-sac down by the community center, and then we'll get their feedback as well. So I'm sure we can come up with the area that you need, an area that is expandable. Jim Mogan will reach out to the Rams to make sure that, you know, it's clear of where they currently use, which I believe it is. And we'll make sure that for the future drainage project, that it's sited so that it doesn't interfere with that.
Okay, and some of our Green Team members, we're going to be participating in a workshop at the Food Bank, Community Food Bank of New Jersey in Egg Harbor Township. Our Farmers Market Committee is going to be doing a presentation, and we are also going to get information on community garden because they just built a community garden at the Community Food Bank location in Egg Harbor Township. And one of the girls involved in the building in that community garden is offered to help us with our community garden. And the garden club and everyone else who wants to get involved.
I think we, so whatever that has to happen to make that work, I think everybody seems to be in consensus that it's a good idea. The other, I think we talked a little bit about 2014 capital.
That's right.
And 2015, I guess, going forward?
2015, the proposed budget anticipates a capital bond for 2015. We'll get to that down the road, but we'll have some recommendations for that bond, but I don't have that information now.
Okay.
I was just wondering, when I was going over our recommend capital improvements list from 2013, 2014, I see we're just getting to, like, I want to check them off as we go, and I'm comparing it to the projects that were in the bonds that we approved, and I just want to check off to see what we have complete, what we don't have complete, what happens to the items that aren't completed, do they just go to the next year? How does it get rolled over? Do you rewrite the capital improvements list? I was wondering if I get clear explanation.
The projects that were authorized in the bond are in design right now, so they're all through some stage of design. So we spoke about the paving project The bulkhead replacement project is almost finalized pending a final meeting with the lifeguards because that involves the replacement of the bulkhead at the city dock. So that final design, we want the lifeguards to have some input, some significant input on that. The fire department roof and the DPW roof is under design as well. The replacement of the tennis court is under design. The reconstruction of Roosevelt Boulevard is under design. That's been, we've asked them not to, well, let me say that a different way. That one's on the back burner right now. That's a municipal aid grant, but we have some issues with the sewer main that Public Works just had the sewer main videoed, and we've identified some problems, and we'll be analyzing that, and I'll be coming back to council. So it looks like we're gonna have to do some sewer work on this, replace the sewer laterals on that before we pave. The drainage improvements on 10th Street North should be out to bid either next week or the early March. I think that hits most of those projects, Lisa?
For 2013?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
So we haven't touched any of the projects on the 2014 list yet.
Can you name a couple of them?
44th Street Bay Shore to Brigantine Avenue, drainage, founds from East Shore to,
Yes, so correct. No, we haven't.
we have not
haven't
touched
done-
Beach Cove from Lagoon to
we-
cul-de-sac.
That hasn't been authorized yet.
Okay, so
that
we're
was
we're nowhere near 14. We're still finishing up 13,
13.
right?
So we haven't, council hasn't done a bond authorizing that work. So correct, we were still working on the bond ordinance that authorized the work that I
Okay.
just went through.
on the tennis
Harbor
course,
Beach Cove in the paving
It's
project?
in the
though?
paving project, yes,
on the tennis course, that's the lights, correct?
that is
Is
correct.
there anything about resurfacing, or, because some of them are pretty broken up
That's
for
right. So
repair?
there is money in a past tennis court bond that is going to be used to try to repair some of those cracks. It
Okay.
will not be a full resurfacing.
Mhm.
It'll be coloring, but it won't be a paving.
Right.
But it'll
But
do a repair on those
For the
cracks.
play surface will be,
That's correct.
okay.
Was Harbor Beach Cove, well, the mayor just mentioned, was that on the 2014 capital
It
improvements
is,
list?
it's listed as the Sandy-related repairs.
Right, that's the one that it talked about. We
On
rejected.
2013 or 2014? Which list?
It was 14,
It's
wasn't
on the 13
So
list?
I'm not sure what list you're talking about.
Well, Sandy list is
Councilwoman.
the 2013 list.
So-
It says road repairs to various locations.
So I produce a capital improvement list as a 5-year plan.
Mhm.
Not that it was funded, but just so that we have a plan in place. Council did a bond authorizing the improvements for the 13 list. We haven't done a bond authorizing the 14 or the 15. And the reason, quite frankly, is because we've done the bond for the NJEIT projects. We've been doing a lot of the Sandy-related, the special funding that results from Sandy. So council didn't authorize a bond, or excuse me, didn't adopt a bond ordinance authorizing the 14 improvements. So even though I presented that list back when I did, that was a 5-year plan, but it can't get implemented unless we do a bond ordinance that authorizes that work, which we did not do simply because we did so much. We did bond ordinance funding the NJEIT projects, which, as you know, were about $10 million. So that's why those 14 projects, that's correct. None of them were on any list at all.
Okay, I understand that. But the other project that the mayor had just mentioned, that would fall under Sandy.
Sandy related, that's correct.
Okay.
Since we're on, talking about pavement, you said the word, on 39th Street, where those perforations are, you mentioned to me that it's beyond what the Department of Public Works can handle. So how is that going to be addressed, and more or less when?
So Public Works went out there and did a patch job, the
Right.
best that could be done. We can't salt, because of the condition of that asphalt, you can't really saw cut and do what you would typically see as a repair. So it needs to be reconstructed. So the next capital bond that council authorizes, we'll have discussion, because there's a list of about 40 streets that are, that need to be repaved. We're not gonna be able to fund 40 streets, so we're gonna, I'll come to you with what I believe is the plan for the capital bond, and it'll include streets, it'll include drainage, it'll include some other work, and then we'll talk. And council will then adopt an ordinance that specifies which projects will be completed, which streets will be paved, and so forth, and then we'll fund that ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Special Events / Economic Development Committee. Want me to start, Ed, and we can, we have a number of issues that kind of are coming together that point in the direction that we need to formalize our Economic Development Committee, and along with the idea of doing special events in Brigantine to ensure that those events are looked at and to see if they do have an economic benefit, a recreation tourism benefit to the city of Brigantine as they are proposed. On the Economic Development Committee, I've looked at some other municipalities, in particular Summers Point, and part of this grew out of the county is doing an economic development plan right now. Councilman Simpson and I, along with Mike Brendan from the Chamber of Commerce, went to a focus group meeting with the county. And at that meeting, there were other municipalities that were represented. And you see different forms of how economic development is handled in different communities. We have an opportunity right now, because we are reviewing our master plan. We should develop an economic development plan that should mesh with the county's plan in some way. And we are also, I believe, we should be applying for a tourism grant, which we've tried before, but we should have that grant developed and work on that as a committee and work with the consultant. Along with that, the city, as you know, is presented with a number of special event requests during the year. I think the discussion that we've had is that in some way they should be looked at by a committee, and then an advisory recommendation made to city council to look at them, whether think it's a good idea or a bad idea moving forward. What I'm looking at is I think we need to formalize that economic development / special events committee, and it needs to operate in a way that that it actually functions as a public body, where they have meetings, minutes are kept, meetings are advertised, they are open to the public, and that you have a committee that actually votes in public on moving forward with some of these initiatives. We don't have that right now. What we have now is purely an advisory group that meets some good ideas, but nothing ever really moves forward. As Councilman Simpson has sat on the committee with me for the last couple of years. So what I've looked at is looked at Summers Point's ordinance. I think it would have to be modified a little bit for our purposes. But I think we should really start looking at a 9-member committee. And then there can be other people who certainly attend. They can be non-voting members. Anybody from the public can attend. But we need to have some focus so we can move forward with some of these initiatives. I sent some information over to the solicitor's office for him to take a look at. Fred, I don't know if you had a chance to look at any of that at the present time.
Yeah, the Summers Point example that you were referring to, Mayor, they memorialized that by ordinance. So they've actually created an ordinance for their Economic Development Commission with goals and reporting procedures back to the City Council and cooperation with the business community and things of that nature. I mean, as a document, it's a pretty orderly document, and should council wish to move forward, we can have a discussion about doing something similar. I'm sure the Brigantine model would not be identical, but some of the content here is good and usable, and we could modify accordingly.
Would this group be almost like the Planning Commission, or where they would have actual responsibility and say?
No, they would be purely advisory, and that's one of the things that's pretty clear in the example from Summers Point. They would just vote as a body to make a recommendation to city council. The final say would be here at this body. They cannot expend any funds. They cannot make any promises to any group. Group could come and make a presentation, say, we really like to do whatever event, or the other part is coming up with an economic development plan that if in fact someone is interested in opening a business in Brigantine, talk to Jim Rotella about this. There may be some funds available to do this as part of our planning grant that we already have, that we would do an inventory of all of the properties that are available. We would also provide direction for funding sources that might be available, whether it's through EDA or through any of the business resources that are listed within the county. So someone coming in who's interested in opening a business in Brigantine would be presented with a document. It would be a fluid document because things would change. Hopefully some things would become occupied, then we could take those off the list. But looking right now for someone to come in who may be interested in the community, there would be a place for them to go to get information, but also for them to maybe have some ideas presented to them and give some feedback to potential investors as well. The county plan is being worked on right now. They're doing focus groups. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I want to do is to put together in the very near future an economic development workshop or summit so that existing businesses can have access to those resources if they choose to. I think that right now with the streetscaping grant in the Central Business District, this is an opportune time to really generate some interest in people hopefully relocating businesses here to Brigantine.
Have we ever looked at getting a grant to actually have a community development person, who devotes like half-time position or whatever? A lot of communities, especially in the northern part of the state, have this, and their whole focus is just on PR and economic development.
That's certainly something that could be looked at. I think working on a plan and starting with an analysis of what we have and what we're actually doing. And I have to be honest with you, the Chamber is doing an excellent job with their outreach. They've actually taken on a lot of this role, which is they're a good partner to have. And there's the Brigantine Chamber, then there's the Greater Atlantic City Chamber. There are a lot of resources out there. We just have to make them available to individuals who might be interested in relocating here. So when they come in, we can present them with information. They don't have to go and spend a lot of time in the research phase that we can prevent. But that may be a recommendation.
Well,
that
I
comes
mean, they
out
would
of-
also prepare materials and packets,
Exactly.
things like that, design them.
Basically streamline the process of opening a business here and making it simpler and easier and more business-friendly.
We would like to see that happen. And in this environment, I think the more resources you can provide and the more information for someone coming in might help. We have a lot of commercial property right now that is not occupied, and I think this is the time where we have to do it in a very formal way. We need to have a committee that meets regularly, that makes decisions, that has minutes, that has public input from both the business community as well as the public in general. And I think, as Joe said, out of that might come an idea like what you mentioned.
Community,
Maybe there is
I forget what the
for-
title is precisely that they use, but this might be a time too to see if we could piggyback with all of the energy that's happening to try to save Atlantic City, to plug into that or have some way of cross-fertilizing that.
I agree, Joe. And we're not the only community looking at trying to do things like this, but I think we need to present our unique opportunities here in Brigantine to those who may be interested in starting a business.
And with the job market so bad, people are going to have to create their own job.
We might see that. People certainly more entrepreneurial perhaps than they have ever been. So I'm going to ask Fred if he could take a look at that and come up with a draft for us at,
Sure. We'll
The
have it
next
for you,
meeting?
we'll have it for you for the next meeting to discuss.
great.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Any other reports by committees or
We're going to talk about ice cream in the executive portion, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
At this time, I will open up the meeting for public comment. Anyone who would like to address council, please, when you step forward, use the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Yes, Charlie?
And a good evening. The name is Charlie DeJulius at 2604 West Brigantine Avenue. At the last council meeting, I was at this mic and talked about 5 opportunities that you guys could work on as Democrats and Republicans. Now, a couple of these 5s were discussed tonight, and in summary, I'll give you them. 1 was a business plan for the city. 2, to make the downtown business area a wow factor. 3, not to have a tax increase. 4, to streamline city government. And 5, to fund Shark Park. I know we don't all hold the same opinions, and we all believe that considering a diverse range of insights can make Brigantine better. The question I have, please let me know what are the steps that you take to follow up on opportunities made by someone at this mic.
What? I don't know whether it was planned that way, Charlie, but I think we addressed 4 out of 5.
Exactly.
Tonight.
It's a pretty good
So,
batting average.
You have great influence with this body.
Well, thank you. Yeah, but funding Shark Park, you know, this is important. I'm just looking at this table right here. If the fire department, police department, or John gets up here and says they have an obsolete equipment, and they get to this microphone, I'm pretty sure they will get funded. Can you consider Shark Park to be an obsolete equipment? and
Well,
get it
I-
funded?
Well, I
we
think
agree with you.
we're going to talk about it, and especially now with the budget, and we've mentioned it a couple of times, maybe even the question of bonding for it,
Oh,
but to
fantastic.
move ahead. So I think everybody here has heard that, and we'll have to digest it and, you know, see how we agree or disagree or how we can push it forward.
Okay, thank you.
I think, too, one of the first steps towards that is we had our grant consultant look into what possible grants are out there. Right now, we did not find any grants. We also looked in and tried to speak with the county to see if they had any open space money. So we are starting to make progressions that way, but it's something that we'll have to discuss as a council to see what we can do to try to help move along.
One other thing about the downtown area, I know we talked about pavers. They're nice, they look nice too, but I think you need more of a wow factor down there. One, we talked about lamp posts. If we could come up with, maybe, I'm just suggesting, like a nautical theme, okay? You could have lamp posts like they do in Hershey, Pennsylvania, where they have the chocolate bud. Maybe you could have something that's similar here for a nautical theme where you could have a surfboard alongside the pole. You know, that type of things that could be attractive to the town if you want to go to a nautical theme for the city. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
And then that's Karen just brought up the point, too, about the planning board. At some point, we have master plan,
think
this
with the last
concept,
master
a
plan,
lot of it's going to come together at one time, so.
With the last master plan, we discussed that a lot.
Yes, John?
John Pucci, 100 Sheridan Square. I applaud this current council stating and working toward a 0 tax increase this year. And I hope you're going to be able to do it after the numbers are straightened out, but I don't believe we've had one in the past couple of years. So I applaud this current council working toward a 0 increase for the residents. At the same time, I'm very disappointed. I've been to a lot of council meetings over the years. I'm disappointed that we were unable to do our annual financial statement on time. I don't know if anybody can comment up there when the last time we weren't able to do that, but that seems to be one of the 10 commandments of a city government, to submit that to the state or whoever it's submitted to. I'm disappointed to hear that wasn't submitted on time. And again, I hope the professionals in this current council works toward that never happening again. I think that one example and others that the auditor pointed out that the general ledger was incomplete, I think that that just might support the idea of a full-time chief financial officer. The streetscape design, the presentation, maybe that, once that's near completion, maybe that can be a presentation to council and have one of those pictures out there on the,
Absolutely.
you know, the rendering of what it might look like, so the public can see it coming in and get an idea of what's going to take place. One of the council members tonight requested an email of the RFP for that. It's my understanding that RFPs are also posted on the website. That's a practice that we're doing, and that we're going to be able to post RFPs on the websites. This one even being one on that list, because it's my understanding that that was agreed to last year.
So this RFP, is my understanding, my intent is to send it to the 11 consulting firms that we have. If council wants it differently, it can go differently. But I was sending it to the 11 consultings that we have.
Again, it was just a general statement
Right.
and request that I believe was agreed to last year, because the RFP for the golf course, when that was sent out, that was on the website. So I'm just making a generic statement. It's my understanding that RFPs are posted on the website, and is that
I think
the practice? Is my
here's-
question.
It is, when you're hiring individuals at the beginning of the year as professionals, and you're hiring for a specialized area, but I think where there may be some confusion, we advertise for a pool of consulting engineers. RFP was set out for the pool. So now the work that comes in is sent to the members of that pool that have been pre-approved. I don't know whether, John, I don't have a problem with the public seeing the RFP, not to just cause, I don't want to cause a lot of confusion by other professional firms bidding on something that they may not be eligible for because they're not in that pool that's already been approved for the competitive bidding purposes. The only question I have for the engineer, for the manager slash engineer at the present time is, do you see that as a set of skills that perhaps that could be beyond the scope of what, or do you think we have enough people in the engineering pool that have done that type of work?
Yeah, I think we have enough people in the engineering pool who have done that work, for sure. Some of the bigger firms that have, I mean, they have
Yeah.
so many disciplines in them.
So is the engineering pool an exception, and generally speaking, RFPs that are put out are placed on the website, just as the golf course RFP has been placed on the website last year?
I would say yes.
Yes,
Is
so
that-
in the past, for the past several years, once we selected the engineering pool, so the initial RFP for consulting services to be included in the pool of engineers. So that RFP goes out in November, December, gets placed on our website, and then we receive the qualifications, and council selects then a pool of engineers. Once that pool of engineers is selected, then during the course of the year, I have not posted the RFPs to the website for engineering services. So I typically don't, because I send them directly to the 11, in this case, the 11 consulting engineers that we have. So I have not been posting those, and I think that could possibly lead to some confusion if I did. So we have a pool of 11, and I go directly to them.
Okay, but there could be other RFPs sent out, specifically the golf course RFP that was sent out last year, and that was posted. So is that a general practice?
I think you're hearing yes, John.
RFPs,
Yeah,
okay.
that would continue.
Okay. And also, is my understanding that the road program list was posted on the website? Are we still doing that?
The capital improvement list, I
The
think.
capital
was on-
improvement list
was
for the
on
road
website
program.
In the previous year.
So we're still doing that practice? Okay, thanks. I support greatly the Development and Economic Committee. I know other towns have them. I think it will greatly help Brigantine move forward. I think that's what we need. That committee, if it is going to have 9 members and a vote, seems like a lot of people would want to view that committee when it's in session. Can that committee possibly be in this room, meet in this room, and also be broadcast on 97 so the public can hear the comments and ideas and all the positive statements and what Brigantine's going to do? I think that'd be a great thing and be very, really good.
We
Is
can
that
certainly-
possible?
Yeah, we can look at that. I'm not sure how, the structure of.
We need Lynn.
Yeah, we need someone to run it, but,
Volunteering, Lynn?
the other thing is, John, we'd have to look at what the quality would be, because I envision a committee like this meeting around a table, not sitting on a dais, but
Just trying to use the hardware that we already have in place for additional uses.
if it would work, I think no one would be opposed to that, since the planning board is already on and the,
FYI, Hamilton Township, their zoning officer is the economic development officer, because normally when a developer comes into town, they go right to the zoning office to see what the zoning is, and they have specific questions for the zoning officer. And also the zoning officer has his disposal, direct disposal, the professionals on the zoning and or planning board to assist him in the communication with the developer or a new business. So I'm just suggesting you might consider, if you need a person for that position, that maybe the zoning officer would have that as a second or third hat. That would be appropriate. Also, I'm glad to see the recycling yard bids going out. I know Mr. Doring did talk about that last year. Since he has been director of the Public Works Department, I've seen a noticeable increase in the cleanliness and the organization of that yard. I'm in there several times a week taking my recyclables. And I just wanted to say, I have a comfort level now. There's a lot of bid talking tonight. This bid for this, bid for that. Question of how do you know what the lowest bidder, if you give it to them or if they're qualified. And I have a comfort level that our current city manager is an engineer. And he knows the city very well. And the questions that were answered to him tonight were very well answered. And I'm just glad that all the things that Brigantine is doing currently as far as the bids and bid processes and grants, I'm very glad that the position of the city manager also wears the hat of being an engineer. And because of that, I just wanted to let you know that my comfort level is very high. Thank you very much.
thank you, John.
May I ask a question of council, based on one of John's comments? The only substantive difference between our engineering RFPs and any other RFP, I think, is that the engineering RFPs are directed to a defined audience who are eligible to vote, or eligible to submit. Why could we not post those and simply make it a practice to include in each RFP some note that only those who are on the current approved list are eligible to submit? That would advise any engineer or prospective vendor who's not on the list that this RFP does not apply to them, and would achieve John's goal of giving advance notice of matters where the city is going to be spending money, in the pursuit of whatever is the scope of a particular RFP. I take your silence as consent.
If council would like to see that, I mean, the RFP is done, so that part, whether it gets posted to the web or not, I mean,
Well,
that's no
yeah.
additional work.
Or just moving forward.
Just modifying it in some way.
And you bring it
to-
in front of council anyway, so
Yes.
I just don't want you, you got enough work.
It's just it's really, it's up to council. If you want to, I mean, if the RFP is done, so that it just has to be modified to add the language that only the bidders that were selected by council, only the consultants that were selected by council are eligible to bid on it.
Well, I mean, as you set up the page, that could just be a banner. So you can just post things below that. So you wouldn't even have to modify anything. And electronically, it would make it easier for you, just a one-time thing. And if you list them, you give them a little advertising.
Why don't you just send them to John? Be easier. Be easier. Now, if that works, I have to work on the language with Fred so that we aren't challenged somewhere. John?
John Johnson, 36 Coquille Beach Drive. I've been coming to city council meetings since 2002, and I've heard always, every year, talking about getting a grant for streetscaping. I had talked to Ed Stinson when he was the engineer over the years about it, and it's always a matter of fact that, you know, they give out so much money. So Brigantine's been waiting, as far as I know, 12 years or more. I'm glad we really got it. Thanks for your persistence and whoever does a grant. And I would say, if you have time, go to Avalon and look at what they did. It's not really gigantic, but it really is neat. And recently Hamilton done that, so just to see different ideas, if you had time, I think there are two places that I looked at and thought were well done. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Paul?
Just on that, I think Avalon is particularly good and kind of lends itself to what we're looking for.
Paul Malfitano, 208 Washington Drive. Here again, of course, on behalf of the Shark Park Volunteer Committee. First, I want to make sure I publicly thank community members like Frank and others and John and guys who've called me and emailed us and continued to push us with the project. The Beachcomber News, the Brigantine Times have been more than giving in helping us get the word out there lately. The local businesses have been tremendously supportive. Public Works, the Police Department, Fire, and Beach Patrol, all very, very giving to get us rolling, to keep us going on this project, as well as City Council. And I know Frank voiced some concerns earlier. We have a committee meeting. We got canceled because of the snow on Tuesday. I was able to secure the community center for tomorrow night. If anybody is interested, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at the community center, we're going to have another committee meeting. Pretty much at this point, we're 10 weeks out. I'm going to end up looking to have them weekly just to keep people up to date. We are constantly looking for more volunteers to be leaders of various areas within the build. The build is going to start basically the week of April 27th, and it's going to be every day during that week. We're going to need people in charge of child care, people in charge of the food area, people to help the volunteers know which direction they're going. So at this point, we're really going to start putting the call out there for people that know they're going to have the time to step up and help us so that we can have them on a list, start formulating who's going to be there when. There's a lot of questions, a lot of concern about scope of the project and how things have been defined. The committee, along with Public Works, has really been able to narrow things down. We went through looking at the possibility of various materials. You know, within the composite world, there's a number of different vendors out there and what they offer. And through a lot of research and a lot of hard work, we've found that a company by the name of Bedford Technologies really does provide the best structural components for a children's playground and should last us for a long time to come. So we're very comfortable with that decision going forward. We're very happy to see that. We have a very large series of events now. If anybody hasn't seen it by now, every day during the week right now, we have 7 different restaurants on the island that are supporting us by, if you go in and tell them it's for Shark Park, they are continuing to contribute to us to help our project. We have next week, next Tuesday night, February 24th, the Brigantine Aquatic Center has been nice enough to offer a water aerobics class. For a $10 donation, that entire donation is going to the park. And anybody could use a little time in a pool right now with all this snow outside. So I know everybody keeps chuckling about it, but it really could be a nice night to go out. The information has gone out now about Olaf's birthday party, a tremendous event for anybody with children. A group by the name of Little Angels Princess Events has over a dozen different princesses and pirates and all kinds of things, Disney characters that are going to be there, particularly focused on the Frozen characters. It's going to be held at Laguna Grill on March 28th. And there's even a VIP hour that people can buy into. There's going to be opportunities for pictures with them, autographs, desserts, cookies, sugar the kids up. It's an event that's focused on the kids, which to be a fundraiser for the kids' park is just a great thing. And I thank Angela Reynolds from the Chamber of Commerce. She really got behind that and got that organized for us. You know, everything's moving along. We're still striving and hoping. We have donations coming in constantly for the pickets. You know, John with CNC Design Fabrication is so generously offered his help with us, and we're trying to get him the materials to start cranking on them. We put a deadline in of the end of February to get the submissions in. That's where we hope that by then, anything in by then, we're hoping that we'll be able to have them completed for the park build in April. We'll still be able to receive them after that, but we won't, you know, we're trying to create a deadline to guarantee for the park opening. There's just so much going on. It's constantly changing. I thank the council for support, and if anybody has any specific questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Okay. Everything's on your website?
We are continuing to update the website. It's brigantinesharkpark.com. We're trying to get information to the city to have it on the city site as well, to have that link and stuff. I keep trying to get everything as universally available as possible.
Paul, thank you for all your hard work and the members of the committee. I know you had probably had no idea when you started this thing, how complicated it would be. And I can tell you, as you found out how generous this community is and continues to be. There is some money, I think, that may have already been allocated for some of the things that are being done. Obviously, we're going to be able to hopefully provide a little bit of funding as we go forward in this budget, and maybe work with you on that. But the volunteers and parlaying, hopefully, whatever money the cities has available, and then whatever they have raised, we can get this thing done. Also, in talking about what we've discussed this evening about economic development, tourism, and all that, it's a great asset for the families that live on the island, but it's also a great asset for people who come to visit the island, and it gives them, you know, something to do it's different, perhaps, than where they live, and it's really an asset for the city of Brigantine. So I think we're looking at it that way. Obviously, the primary goal is the recreational benefit that is here, but also the secondary goal is to encourage people to come here and use the recreational assets that we have, whether it's the beach, the bay, and now an updated Shark Park or a golf course or whatever. So keep up the good work.
I know on that note, as we receive the donations for the pickets, how many people take the time to write a handwritten note that don't live here or only come in the summer or only come part-time, or say, my kids grew up using it, you know, maybe it'll be around for my grandchildren. You know, it's amazing. It really is. So I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
Great, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, Joan?
Joan Reese Evans, 1419 Bayshore Avenue. Tonight I want to talk about the golf course, and I just go over a little history for you. I might have some of these facts wrong. In 2002, I think we bought the golf course for $4.3 million. And then we got a grant from Green Acres, which brought it down to our cost was $3.5 million. And allowing for 15,000 people in Brigantine during the summer, that comes out to 2,300 per head, men, women, and children. And then for the first 5 years, the golf course was productive and produced a profit. And but we, the taxpayers, never got any money back from that. I think that's a correct statement, isn't
Well,
it?
your math is, your formula is off. You took the total sales price of the golf course and divided it by the population. That would be wrong, because the golf course last year was the first time it ever cost the taxpayers anything. So
Yeah, but it shouldn't
you'd have
be
to
cost-
take that contribution that was made last year, which I think in the budget was it was about 600 and some thousand dollars. Divide that by the, if you want to use 15,000, that's what it's cost the taxpayers so far. Not the total sales price, because the golf course was self-sufficient up until last year.
In other words, the revenue from the golf course was paying the bond payment?
Yes, and in fact.
Up until, what, 2 years ago?
Well, no, last year was the first
Last
year
year?
that there was a contribution from the city to pay for the golf course.
But
So-
it's still our investment, and for the next...
Well, you had a great investment, think about this. You bought an asset for $3.5 million that has cost the taxpayers $500,000 or $600,000. Probably less than that, because we didn't use the $200,000, which we'll use this year. So that is, if you want to use that math, that's a tremendous deal. You have an asset that was, well, actually it was $4.3 million, and it cost the taxpayers $500,000. I can tell you there's no other recreational asset in the city of Brigantine that has ever done that. None. Tennis courts, football field, hockey courts, any of them have never, ever done that. This has cost, you have 80 acres of open space. 160 acres?
Yeah.
160 acres?
Keep going.
I only play half.
Thank God.
But what I'm getting at, Joan, is you can't do the math that way. It doesn't make sense. The idea is that, yes, it did cost taxpayers last year, but it has not cost, it didn't cost anything from 2002
Well,
until now.
ever since, for the last 7 years, it's been showing a deficit.
Yeah, but the money that was used to pay down, if it showed a deficit, was money that was earned by the golf course in years when they did very well. They had about $1 million in surplus that they built up, and the smart thing about that was it wasn't spent. It was there to pay for the years when it wasn't self-sufficient. Now, if you look, there are many other municipal golf courses out there. I don't know this for a fact, so I probably shouldn't say it, but I know not all are self-sufficient. I think I'm safe in saying that. Or most of them, I think, just venturing a guess,
Close to none.
that the debt service is paid by the government entity.
Is it right that we had somebody come in and look at the golf course and say we needed $1.something million to upgrade it, to repair it, in fact? So that's going to be $1 million. And then we had, if you'll let me finish, then we had, on top of all of that, then we put out an RFP, and we had 9 people responding, and 8 people decided to drop out when they knew the facts. And we only had 1 person left who's willing to take it on as a proposition. And doesn't that give us an 8-to-1 negative advantage to running it ourselves?
Well,
And if
Let me answer, you asked me a question just a moment ago. You want to take a step back. I'm not sure exactly what you asked, the first part of that question about the numbers. You asked about the RFP. Yes, we did put out, there was an RFP to operate the golf course. The million, whatever needs to be put in.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, and I'm not an engineer, but in talking to people who are involved in the golf course, to open the golf course is open right now. The golf course can open next year, and I can tell you that they don't need $1 million investment to continue to operate into the spring and summer season.
Yeah, but sometime down the road, probably early down the road, we're going to need to make that investment. That's still on the books.
That is
And
something.
that comes from general wear and tear and because of Sandy.
There
I
has
would
been
think.
general wear and tear. When that would need, any repairs would need to be made is anyone's guess. Could repairs be made incrementally? Could things be done over time and out of operating revenue? That remains to be seen.
What else did Andy ask you?
I think that what that means, when we put up the RFP and we got 8 people dropping out, that means, and only 1 person staying in, that means we have a 1 to 8 chance of it being successful.
I don't know if I would make that correlation. That's an interesting approach. I think maybe a for-profit enterprise may have looked at it as perhaps not something they wanted to do.
Well, don't we want to run it for profit?
We
You
don't
know,
have-
what's the point of having something as valuable as that if we're not trying to make a profit from it? Make something for ourselves and make it successful.
I think everyone here would be very happy if the golf course were to break even and continue as when I say break even, pay all of its bills, pay for the debt service, and perhaps make some revenue going forward, put it in a positive light. I think people would be very happy with that approach.
Well, I think 8 companies decided that wasn't possible.
Well, I don't know if they decided it wasn't possible. It may not have made the revenue that they wanted to make in order to run a business.
Sure. And since we only have 1 that seems to think he can make a profit from it, I think rather than gambling with the taxpayers' money, are we going to make it or not every year?
What I would tell you is this, Joan. And we've talked about this, and as you know, we've had this discussion. I've had it with, I think, you before at the microphone and Mrs. Phillips as well.
No, you haven't had it with me.
Well, we've had many discussions about the golf course. We are going to discuss the golf course in executive session this evening. And as I've talked about before, and I think the rest of the council agrees, we should have a full discussion about the various proposals here at a public meeting, give all the numbers, everything laid out completely, and then make a decision as a body. But the public should see all of those numbers, and if we make a decision as a body, hopefully it will be a decision that the public agrees with, because I believe the decision should be made on what is best for the Brigantine taxpayers. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best for the Brigantine taxpayers with regard to the future of the golf course? So we need to lay all that out, and then you can see all that, and then you can agree or disagree with the decision that's made by council.
Yes, I think that would be perfect, actually. And when would you
Let
have...
the record reflect that, please.
When would you have this meeting? Would it be at a council meeting, or would it be a separate meeting?
Well, I think that the council meeting would be the best because it would be televised, and anyone who can't make it here could certainly...
Yeah, but they can't talk if they don't come.
Well, they can
to
come here and talk.
Be advertised.
It'll be advertised, and it could be as early as the next council meeting if we get some updates tonight that make that possible.
Yeah.
And it will be advertised that it will be discussed at that meeting.
But I think if it if it isn't possible to use the golf course to make money for us, then we might as well change it into a park and have, so that we can all use it.
Well, you can use it now.
Well, some of us don't play golf. Most of us don't play
I
golf.
can tell you there's a lot of activity out there is non-golf related.
Get rid of Shark Park, get rid of the baseball
You know,
fields, get rid of everything.
what I'm getting at is, not that it's encouraged, but there are people walking on the golf course. At
Well, I
different
wouldn't
times.
like to walk on the golf course in case I get hit by a golf ball.
Well, they're there before golfers or after golfers, but
But I recommend, if we keep it, then so that we can not play with the taxpayers' money, that we change it into a park so that we can all enjoy it.
well, if it were a park, Joan, there would be no revenue. So it would wind up costing you all the money to maintain a park unless you turned it into what the north end of Brigantine looks like as a natural area. So if you had a park, you'd have to mow the lawn, you'd have to do all the things to keep up the amenities, and there would be no revenue coming in. I mean, last year's golf revenue was, Mr. Simpson? $990,000 was generated in rounds of
And
golf.
how much did we lose last year? How much will be on our budget this year?
Depends on how things are structured going forward.
I think it was on there was
No, it doesn't.
347,000, but we haven't, we've been working on a plan, and believe me, I'm sure by next meeting, we'll discuss that plan, hoping to bring the auditor in, and then, you know, we'll absolutely show you the absolute numbers from both sides of the aisle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Joan,
Let
in
me-
the budget that was presented to us tonight, the manager's budget, there is a line item for the golf course, and I think it's going to be posted on the website. You can go look, and you will be able to see
Yes,
what
I
the
intend to.
appropriation is for the golf.
Yeah, I
And-
intend to.
342,700.
Let's, if I may,
Yes,
let's,
yes.
let's not criticize Joan's math and ignore the fundamental point she makes, which is an accurate one. The golf course has never thrown off any money to the benefit of the taxpayers. It has been, because it built up a surplus in the early years, able to pay the bills in declining revenue years until last year. The cost of the golf course is not what today, over the 12 years of its life in city ownership, it has generated in terms of profit or loss. It's that we have continuing expenses on the golf course in years to come. We will have capital, whoever is operating the golf course, and if it's the city, it's the taxpayer, there will be the need for capital expenditures. I don't recall anybody ever saying you would need $1 million or any other particular figure to open the golf course, but no one denies, and we had independent experts who evaluated this for us and
Well,
reported what...
independent, I think, is
Yeah,
up-
Phil.
yeah.
As a stretch.
There was a report done that identified the need for capital. You could disagree maybe about the magnitude of it, the timing of it, but there's no question an asset of that type is going to need capital improvements over time. The real comparison, and you said, Phil, something to the effect that you think that everybody would be happy with an asset which broke even and maybe throw off a little bit of revenue. The real choice is between an offer which has been made and which the terms of which we all know up here, and I still don't know what after 2 years. I mean, I know because I do my own inquiries, but I have heard allusions over the 2-year period from yourself, Phil, and from Andy to an alternative means, and now I gather Andy's suggesting that next meeting we're going to have something concrete in concrete numbers. Well, we all know up here that I asked when this subject was first brought up, could I see some of these numbers? Could I have some understanding of what it is that is the alternative proposal? I haven't seen that yet. The bottom line is always going to be your revenues have to exceed your costs. The golf course costs have not been just the costs that we've talked about, which have resulted last year in a deficit, this year in a deficit. Also costs that haven't made it onto the books, like the $750,000 in additional borrowing that went to bond anticipation notes, how many years ago was it, 2007? Still somehow hasn't made it to a bond. That's a golf course expense. That's got to go on the ledger as a golf course cost. when one is trying to evaluate where we are today and what the course has cost us. And the biggest issue, which, again, I think was Joan's second fundamental point and is unassailable, is that the real question is, in a absolutely uncertain future of the golf industry, we have to choose between putting the risk on the taxpayers or taking the risk off the taxpayers. There's not a risk, unfortunately, from anything that I've seen and anything that anyone has said over these past 2 years we've been talking about this. There's not any substantial likelihood that there is going to be positive revenue generated of any substantial amount by the golf course. That's got nothing to do with us, with Brigantine, even with the quality of the course. The industry is going in that direction generally, and there's nothing I've seen yet which says that we're likely to buck that, and, you know, shuffling chairs around and coming up with a different management structure, a different, you know, operational structure isn't going to change that. You need X number of people coming in and paying to golf and to have food and beverage and whatever else, and it's got to exceed your cost of running it. I mean, that's fairly simple. We are faced with the choice of either pursuing a third-party offer, again, the terms of which I can't talk about, but which we know, or doing something which, bottom line, puts everything, all the risk on the taxpayers, and has a lot of happy thoughts and projections on the other side, none of which I've seen any evidence yet that I should give credence to. So that's, you know, what Joan is saying, not to paraphrase it, John, but it's a legitimate concern. It's more than a legitimate concern when we have yet to hear what is this alternative that, I hope, is one that people are going to tell me with confidence is going to increase revenues substantially at the golf course and or substantially reduce the costs and be able to accommodate the need for future capital investment, which, you know, if the taxpayers own it, the money's either coming from operations or it's coming from the taxpayers. So those are the real questions. Those, you know, whether somebody calculates the productivity or the profitability of the golf course based on the population, and you shouldn't do that, immaterial.
Well, it isn't immaterial, Rick, when it's wrong. So I wanted to explain that, but once again, you can't hold the city taxpayers, in this case, put them out in a position that if the city doesn't turn it over to a third-party operator, that the standard is that it must have a profit going forward, and that profit has to cover every potential risk that is out there. When in fact, the third-party position may not do that. So it doesn't make any sense. How can you say that we're going to give an operation to someone else if someone's willing to take over the golf course operation and guarantee the taxpayers of Brigantine that they will not have any cost going forward? You would see a unanimous vote.
I'd vote right now.
On this council. Unanimous. That would be without a question. So if that's the goal, we've got a lot of work to do going forward. So once again, why don't you wait until you see the proposal before you close your mind to what is being worked on?
Well, I'd like to see a cost-benefit analysis
You're going to see everything.
for each one of the options that we have.
We're going to
We
show you
need
cost to
we
the
need to know the
taxpayers, and
cost-
that's what you have to understand.
And the benefit that we're going to get from it.
And what has taken to this point is, and why we're going into executive session this evening is, Mr. Cerny's going to update us on where he is with the one proposal that we have received, because a lot of the questions that have been asked have not been answered with the proposal that we have currently. Have not been answered. If Mr. Cerny has answers to that, that'll all come out when we have a full discussion of it at our first meeting in March.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion. We do need to go into executive session.
Really?
Yes. Potential litigation, personnel, contract negotiations, and I guess
Ice cream.
ice cream.
Ice cream. We all scream for ice cream.
Lynn, if you would read the resolution to retire to executive session?
Whereas the Open Public
bless.
Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstance presently exists, and whereas the governing body wishes to discuss potential litigation, personnel, and contract negotiations, minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving the confidentiality of the above no longer requires that confidentiality, then the minutes can be made public. Now therefore be it resolved that the public be excluded from this meeting. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Thank you. Got a motion and a second. Could we have a roll call, please? Are all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
There's one.
One
There's
appointment,
one possible
one
appointment,
appointment to the, is possible to the planning board.